Did full-time reselling fail us last year? In today's video, we are gonna go over the straight facts. I'm gonna have the receipts. I'm gonna show you guys what we made last year. I'm gonna tell you the storyline of how our reselling business evolved over the course of last year in 2022. And I am going to go over both the successes and the sacrifices. In a previous video, I went over some of the failures of last year, but I thought this would be a really good video to encompass everything that happened in last year of our reselling business, and then how we are planning to move forward with that information. I hope this is both inspirational and educational for you. Let's go. So what exactly did we do last year? And I'm going to be referencing other YouTube videos. I will be sure to link it in the cards above as well. But starting with the beginning of the year, I was on Poshmark and eBay. I have been listing on both of those platforms consistently since 2017. I've been full-time since 2019, and every single year our business has increased, whether it's due to the amount of items we're listing and working my husband more into my business. The beginning of last year, we really began to realize, okay, we're kind of bursting at the seams. Like, we've got a lot of active listings in our store. At that point, I want to say we were probably teeter-tottering between like 1,900 and to upwards of 2,200 listings. And so we started to go, instead of listing all the things, because we have access to consignment stores, but we also have access to the Goodwill outlets, which is where you pay by the pound. And so we started to go, let's audit our inventory. Like, we've been doing this for a minute. Anything that has been listed for more than a year and a half needs to go. And then we also needed to start prioritizing which categories did the best for us in profitability. We landed on snow gear. That could also be like hunting gear. Anything really contributing to activities outdoors was pretty prominent, a higher ROI for us. Then we had jeans, obviously brand specific within this category, but jeans were a pretty good ROI for us. We also had shoes and boots. And then I want to say sweaters and cardigans was another one, and then coats and jackets. So obviously we had the snow gear category, but we also had just your standard like windbreakers and puffer coats. Because we live in the Pacific Northwest, it also made sense for us to be prioritizing those categories because we had more access to those categories. And then in about, I want to say March or April of last year, Poshmark started to do some crazy things. They were finicking with our algorithms. People started to see decreases in sales. I was putting the same amount of effort as far as like listings goes on eBay and on Poshmark on a daily basis. And yet every single month I watched my income on Poshmark drop. Whereas on eBay, I continued to see it go up. So I had posted a video about I am closing my Poshmark store. And basically it was a part of our audit. We wanted to minimize the amount of active listings we had on hand. So it was really easy to drop one platform and then focus on the other platform, make sure everything was still listed if it was in our inventory system. And if we had it for more than a year and a half, we just pulled it off the platform. And I started to use that time to send things off to ThreadUp, send things to local consignments. We did a yard sale. Like, there was a lot of ways that we tried to liquidate this product. Then at the start of summer, I started to go, now's the time. Like, I think actually it was closer in July. I was like, let's start bringing stuff back over to Poshmark. Let's play around with some of the titles. Let's see if this new algorithm I can get on its good side. And more importantly, if I'm gonna be cross-listing things over there and they might be prioritizing things that aren't selling for, just like $15, $20 or less, maybe I'll start prioritizing only cross-listing over to Poshmark the things that are gonna sell for like $50 and up. And then I think we dropped to like $35 and up. And then that is when everything started to change. About that time, I was also actually in May, I watched people like Daily Refinement and Hustle at Home Mom, my friend Harry Tornado, Josh and Haley, they started to go onto this new platform called Whatnot. Now, if you've been on my channel for a while, you may remember this, but about 2 years now, I started to partner with another platform called Galaxy, and they were focusing on this very same concept of live selling. The problem with their live selling platform was I had to set the rate of what the item was going to sell for, and it wasn't like an auction. And so I could be live for like an hour and make maybe $100. And I was also trying to make things affordable. So I was making prices like $5, $10, but it just didn't make sense for people to like want to purchase. And it was really hard to determine like what people's sizes were. So when Whatnot came into the picture, I was extremely apprehensive because I was like, I really got on board. I loved the concept of live selling because I actually started with that a few years back when I was trying to give back to my community and was trying to do a Facebook group. eBay, you can do local pickup, but Poshmark doesn't have a way for people to do local pickup right now. So anytime people were asking me like, hey, how can I buy the stuff that you have on hand? I'm like, you have to go to my online stores. Like that's where everything is listed. And they're like, well, can't I just like buy from you and come and pick up from you? And some people would do that, but it was just really hard to create a exposure to our local area. So I had started a Facebook group, but man, that was difficult. Like the marketing and all of that. Anyways, I digress. That's kind of the preface of why I decided to do Galaxy. The one thing I liked about Galaxy over doing it through the Facebook group was they were already doing the marketing for you. They already had the payments. They were collecting the addresses. I didn't have to worry about any of that. So when Whatnot came into the picture, I just sat back and I watched because I was like, this is cool. Like I'm into it. I love the auctions, like this is neat. I'm listening. By the time I decided to apply for Whatnot, there was like a month delay. And I even was like,
hey Josh, my main man, can you help me out here?
Like I was asking all of my friends that were already live, like, can you get me approved? Like I'm trying to get approved. By the time I got approved, it was in July. I want to say it was July 4th that I had gotten approved and loved it. Loved the community, loved the atmosphere, loved the growth potential. I saw the vision of where Whatnot is going and I was like, I can get behind this. They're just building this audience, but that's okay. And you know, I can have items that are selling for a little bit now, but they can grow to something far more in the future. You know, I just gotta keep pumping this pipeline as they're gaining another audience. And at the same time, I started to share back onto Poshmark. I wanna say it was August. One of my friends ended up asking me, well, they said I got an Airbnb, I'm going to Posh Fest, who else wants to go? I was like, I haven't gotten a chance to see this friend in person since 2019. I would love to go visit her. So I was like, I'm in, I'm gonna get my ticket. Even though at that point I was like, Poshmark is dead, this ain't going anywhere. Like, what am I doing? I was like, I'll just jump on board. So in August, if I remember correctly, the very first email we ever received was, hey, Poshmark's gonna have a new feature coming out. Since you are going to Posh Fest, we would like to give you potential access to this new thing. In order for you to get access, you need to go through these prompts, basically fill out this like Google form. And all along the way, it was like, keep your mouth shut. And there was questions that was like pertaining to live sales, like, are you selling on other live platforms? I'm like, could this be a live sell feature, Poshmark? But they weren't saying anything yet. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. Like they're trying to be like Whatnot, like they're totally not going to surpass what Whatnot is doing right now. And so I just kind of laughed at it, but I filled out the prompts. I did message my one friend that was going to Posh Fest. I was like, did you get this poll? Obviously we weren't supposed to talk about it, but I figured at this point she probably had it as well. So we talked about it. And it wasn't until a few weeks later that they actually released that they were gonna be doing Posh Live sales or shows, and they were gonna have it in beta. And you had access, and there was this really weird, like you had to go through onboarding, and then you had to have an allotted time where you could register to go on specific days. Like you had to get a pre-planned scheduled time to go live at that point. So that worried me when they first started, but then I was like, I get it, because I remember Galaxy had to do the same thing before, because they only have so much like memory on their app to be able to house so many people going live at once. And they also wanted to encourage more customers going to fewer lives instead of like a mass amount of people to start. Long story short, with the last half of the year, because let's face it, that was a blur, I went headfirst into live sales. I really was interested and excited about what Whatnot was doing. I still believe that a lot of their features are really good. Like their foundation is good, and they've really done a great job of constantly asking, how can we reevaluate? Granted, little history about Whatnot. They have actually been around, if I remember correctly, I think it's been 3 years now, and they've only had the clothing category. It was like February that it went live. So a little over a year at this point. So the clothing category on Whatnot is still relatively new, even though the platform has been around for several years. They've got a long journey as far as still building an audience there, and I think they're being very strategic in how they are bringing other people onto the platform. But Poshmark did have the leverage that Whatnot did not, and that was the customer base, because Poshmark has been around for 11 years, and they have grown an audience that is used to clothing, that is used to pre-owned and new, that is used to luxury, that is used to boutique clothing and just having fun ways to style clothing. And so if that is more of your MO, if you're more interested in like telling someone this is a great way to style this, this, and this, the customer base is there for you on Poshmark. Is it developing on Whatnot? Yes, in my opinion, not entirely. And in fact, because of that fact, I will go into the figures just to show you guys. On Whatnot, I had started with 1 show a week. Then after a month of doing that, I got the hang of it, went to 2 shows a week. By that point, I remember doing like a 2,000 follower party, and then I promoted that I was gonna do 3 shows a week. By that point was when I got notification that Poshmark was gonna start doing live shows. So I was like, perfect. I'm gonna jump over there. I will dip my toes into both of them. And then that's how I'm able to give you all this synopsis right now, is because I was hands-on in both platforms. I was seeing what was happening on Poshmark, seeing what was happening and whatnot. I was like, okay, if I market this one, how does that do? If I market this one, how does that do? If I play with thrifted, how does that do? If I play with new, how does that do? I did a bunch of trial and error. Granted, for me, I can give you the synopsis and then you can go and do the same exact things that I did and go, Ashley, I had the complete opposite experience than you, and that is perfectly fine. I want to give this information to you educationally to maybe help you play around with some different ideas, but you could try it out for yourself and have a different result. We all live in different locations. We all live with different inventory close by us. I've mentioned that before. So you got to see what works best for you if you are interested in doing live sales. We really got to a place where we were doing 4 to 5 shows a week. And then when we went into December on Poshmark, I did a 12 days of Christmas. And so I was doing a show every single day from December 1st to December 12th. There was one day we didn't have a show, if I remember correctly, but because I was waiting for inventory to come in. And then on Whatnot, I partnered with 2 other people and did a 12 days of Christmas. So that way we did a rotation of days. That way I didn't have to do all of them myself. So then I finally had to look at the facts. I have such big belief in certain things that sometimes that can be a fault of mine. You know, I'm like so gripped onto something and being like, I'm gonna keep doing this, and I have such a belief in what is happening here, and it will sometimes be to my detriment. And when I looked at the analytics, I was completely blown away. So I ended Poshmark the year with having made $56,147. The crazy thing about that was the bulk of that came from my September to December. And a lot of people were kind of like, oh, it's because you started live shows when it first started on Poshmark. But I actually saw a consistent amount of, like, I made the same amount of money, maybe $1,000 less in those other months. And so realistically, we carried the same amount of money even when we had access to it when a lot of other people didn't. We made more in the first month. I'll be totally transparent about that. But like, it was 17,000 in my first month. And then I think November I made 13,000 and something. And then November I think was also 13,000. And then right up to the end of the year, it was like 12 something. Versus Whatnot. Whatnot from June 16th to December 31st. I made $16,768. That was so surprising to me that I made more in the first month on Poshmark than I did in all of that time that I was on Whatnot. Also bear in mind, while I was doing Whatnot shows more towards the end of the year, I was getting access to doing promoted shows with Whatnot. So they would push my show to go live when I was live, so more audience would come in. I also had 2 different times where they gave me a Lululemon gift card for me to promote in my show. And so that was something that I started to really have a problem with Whatnot, is the fairity. I didn't feel like it was fair that they were highlighting specific sellers because of their performance and going, well, we want to push you because we think you could do really well. Yeah, well, what about the person that just got approved on your site? I didn't think it was right for me to come onto YouTube and go,
Whatnot is great. You can make so much money over there.
when the only time I was making my highest sales were the shows that they gave me a giveaway to give away to my audience, or they were promoting me through a chain, or just pushing a notification on their app that I was live. That's not something that everyone's getting access to. Therefore, I can't say that's a good platform to be on. I mean, it's that you can make a ton of money on, because I knew I was getting a hand up. And I've told them specifically that. I actually had a couple interviews, was talking with a few different employees at Whatnot, and I was like, I don't like that you've created this atmosphere that people have to give away stuff, because the new person just getting started is not going to be able to give away Apple AirPods. And I'll be honest, a lot of my friends are doing that. And to each their own with their business, that's fine. But I'm thinking about the person that's just starting reselling. And I don't think that's fair to have different giveaways that are happening on a regular basis and them looking at that going, I can't compete with that. I just think it's a bummer. But I also understand that Whatnot is working really hard to try to grow an audience right now. So I think they're just throwing everything they've got at it. But to that point, still, I had a ton of followers on YouTube. I have a ton of followers on Instagram. Yet, in a 6-month time frame, I made $16,768. And in 1 month of being on Poshmark shows, I made almost that same amount. In a month and a week, I made that same amount. So I began to realize at the end of the year that while I love where Whatnot is going, it does not make sense for me. Kind of the same thing that I did with Poshmark and eBay at the start of the year. Okay, I'm putting this much effort into this, look at how much money I'm making, but I'm putting the same effort into this and I'm actually seeing a decrease every month. That doesn't make sense to me. The numbers need to speak for that. What sacrifices were made last year? So my husband, after fire season and working through the summer, when live sales really started to pick up, he's like, man, sounds like you really need me. And to be fair, absolutely. We had a lot of items that we were selling on a daily basis. We would go to the post office and have hundreds of items. I had many photos that I was showing. I was so excited, and still would love to say during that season, the amount of customers that we were getting to know and the relationships, and still have so many of them. I'm not trying to say it in past tense, but I am so grateful for every purchase and every single one who supported us through the season, because we were able to do this full time, and we were able to do this in a way that was really working, and we loved what we were doing. If you haven't seen my last video where I was talking about some of the horror stories with liquidation, I recommend watching that one. But we definitely had some stressors along the way, but ultimately we sacrificed a lot. Because even though Jeff and I were working full time through September, October-ish to December, we woke up and hit the ground running. Like, I'm not kidding when I say I couldn't work out anymore because I didn't have the time. If I wasn't ordering inventory online, I was going downstairs to try to figure out how to curate the show that was happening that day. I would then have to hang up everything, number everything, list everything, do the show, package the orders. Then at this time in the season, Poshmark didn't have the bundle feature yet, so I was having to manually bundle everything. So Jeff and I quite literally were working like 16-hour days, and it was never ending. It was constant. And I remember there was one day where Jeff just wanted time. He wanted time to be able to hang out. And I was just like, we can't. Like, even though there's no deadline right now, like, I have to keep moving. There's so much that we need to take care of. And with some of the different oopses that we had in liquidation, we were losing a lot of money at a time when it's kind of like you need more money in your budget in order to get Christmas gifts. Furthermore, we have so many birthdays in our family. We have 2 sons and my brother that have birthdays in December. My stepdad's birthday is in November. November. Like there's just so much that happens at the end of the year. It was that day that we realized this isn't fun anymore. We're living, breathing this. And at the end of the month, we're back to zero. We're chasing short-term money right now to get us through the month. But what are we doing for our investment into our future? And are we gonna have to chase inventory for the rest of our life? Then right around Thanksgiving, my mom found out that she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I kind of threw myself into live sales. Mom, if you're watching this, do not cry. But I tried to ignore what was going on, and I threw myself into live shows because I was not ready to face what that could mean and what the journey would mean for my mom and her health. And I would find myself crying at days while I was trying to prep a show and like going like this so I wouldn't have it like run down my face or like go like this. And then I would go live and it would keep me going because I finally would have a moment where I could just breathe again. And realizing that we were such a light to so many people during our live shows continued to keep me going forward. But then I'd wake up the following day with the reality of what was going on and I'd have to push those feelings down again. Then fast forward to the start of the year. We're beginning to analyze where our income is, and right after I talk about our sacrifices in Q4, I'm gonna give you the full details of every single platform that we made money on and what our total was. But the start of the year, Jeff and I started to say, okay, we need to drop Whatnot because it's not producing in the way that it needs to. We can invest that same time and effort into Posh shows and keep going with eBay, but then I can also get some of my time back. So if you guys have been a viewer of ours for a long time, you probably noticed at the start of the year, we had an increase in videos again because I had finally time to do it. And I was able to start working out again. I mean, we were able to kind of get some of our time in our life back. And in the first week, my stepdad told me that he had skin cancer. And it was interesting because after my mom was diagnosed, the beginning of the year, I'm very much a goal setter. I'm always like, I'm gonna shoot for the stars this year and I'll backwards engineer and how is that supposed to look on a quarterly basis? And when the first of the year began, I was like, I can't see past this month. I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. I can't think that far ahead right now. We need to take things day by day. And we were also taking things day by day because we were debating on whether or not Jeff needed to go back to work. The goal was for Jeff to be full-time with me through Q4 and also kind of get away from like the bad weather that happens this time of year because he's a truck driver. Whether it's wildfire season or just standard trucking, he does multiple projects. I didn't want him to continue to drive on the roads when the conditions are really bad. And so we started to ask ourselves those questions, and then my stepdad gave me that information. And then 2 days later, my daughter was rushed to the hospital and had appendicitis and had to have an emergency surgery. And it made me realize this was why I couldn't see past this month. There was still so many more things in play that was not yet in our peripheral that was gonna give us our defining decisions. So we decided to slow down the amount of Posh shows that we were doing, stay consistent with just 2 shows a week, made it a little easier too for the people who love to be in our shows but also want to do sales themselves. We respect that and want them to be able to have the time. And we started to do 2 shows a week. And we decided we wanted just to start to build our long-term income, not our short-term anymore. I love live sales, but I don't think I will go at that sprint anymore because I lost the time to invest in you, to help educate you, to spend time doing what I love, which is the creative aspect, to go to thrift stores, not feel like I have to buy from wholesalers just to get enough inventory for our shows and for our store specifically. So overall, with last year, we ended up making, so our total on eBay was $58,962.71. Then as a reminder, our Whatnot shows was $16,768. Our Poshmark was $56,174, which brought us to a total of $131,877. So did full-time reselling fail us? No, we've actually made the most we've ever made in 1 year on reselling. But what was it worth? And when I started to see the health conditions happen in my family, I realized chasing money isn't my season. I am a former investment firm office manager. I've loved growing money ever since I can remember. And I started to ask myself, do I like my day-to-day? We sacrificed a lot of time with our kids' activities. It was such a blur through the holiday season that I barely made it to every single holiday, whether it was Halloween or Thanksgiving or Christmas. And I realized I didn't want to live like that. I finally realized I'm okay with being a marathon runner, that I will still continue on with reselling. I will still continue to grow my long-term and my short-term money, because that's the beautiful thing about reselling is there's so many different avenues that we can make money, right? So you can do your pipeline of Poshmark and eBay where you're listing stuff consistently and things sell even while you're sleeping. Then you can do some short-term money where pop up a live sale, get a ton of inventory out of your house fast. Then you've got stuff like YouTube and Instagram and other socials where you can educate people and have fun with building a community here. And that's a slow and steady wins the race game too. But eventually videos that I've made 3 years ago, I can still get paid on today. So thinking about that long-term game. I began to realize what the hustle culture can really look like in our community. And I was doing the quick flips with smaller profits, and I didn't like that game. I've even considered having a storefront locally to us because I felt like that might be the route. If I'm buying all this inventory and stuff doesn't sell in live sales, maybe that's a way that I can give back to my community. But then again, I began to realize I don't want to be glued to a storefront. So what are we doing differently in 2023? Well, I kind of shared a lot of it already. Obviously, we've dropped down the amount of shows we're doing. I'm doing quality versus quantity. I'm getting back into YouTube, and we decided that Jeff should start working again. And the biggest blessing in that was we literally have a project, like a construction project that's happening like 5 minutes away from our house. He literally walked in and said, "Hey, are you hiring? You got a lot of big equipment up here. I'd love to learn how to use some of them." He's used some before, but some of it was new, and they basically hired him on the spot. And if you know our story, Jeff was a former federal employee that when we first got married, 11 years ago now, his job ended that same year. And we couldn't leave this area because we had joint custody with his 5 older children, my 5 stepchildren. And so we've spent the last 11 years raising them while also hobbling our way through financially. We've had times where we've been in the middle of foreclosure and we've prevailed. We've had times where finances were tight. We had times where when we were pregnant with our kids, our 3 that we added into the mix with 8, I had WIC, we had food stamps. I felt the shame that came with that. I told myself I would never do that again. But then I realized like this is why these benefits are here. We just kept growing. We've continued to grow. And in 2019, I was able to go full-time as reselling because I was making the equivalent of what my paychecks were at my full-time job. And it created the flexibility for me to be home with my kids. And that is still going to stay. But now we understand that slow and steady wins the race. And that we could be working together with like full-time. But we want to make sure we've prioritized what matters to us, and we have boundaries around family time and time with each other and time with our friends. I can't get back the last 6 months of my life. I literally worked myself into probably an extra 10 pounds and just into the dirt. I was exhausted, I was wiped, and I was emotionally running away from things that were prevalently happening in my family at that time. And I don't want to do that again. And so I'm being very intentional about the friends that are in my life right now and making time and space for them, along with just putting my phone away when I'm having breakfast with my kids in the morning. As funny as it sounds, I'm slowing down and making things out of sourdough, which probably sounds so funny, but it's such a process, whether it's flatbreads or cookies or sourdough bread or regular bread or anything. Like, each step takes time, and so it's causing me to slow down, and it just sounds so funny. I'm like, I'm making sourdough stuff right now, but it's a part of my healing from what occurred last year. I don't want to hustle hard, and I don't want to teach you guys that that's what you need to do to make a living. Granted, I will preface all of that by saying I am fully aware that there are some people that are single parents or maybe are in different situations where they do have to hustle. And I believe that there are certain seasons where that is applicable. That was our season in Q4. We did need to hustle. But did I go out of that and learn a lot of things? You best believe I did. I did. So I believe that we can still make the same amount of money this year with working smarter, not harder. And that's what I'm going to be teaching you guys for the remainder of this year. I've been doing a mini series of just talking about the fundamentals, both with live sales as well as Poshmark and liquidation and wholesale. We'll actually be going into the mini series soon about live sales, but I want to slow down so we can all speed up together and have a good time along the way. So I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish last year, and I'm even more so proud of what I was able to learn through that season. I hope to see you guys in my next video, and I hope that this was, like I said at the beginning, inspirational and educational for you. Bye.